So Charles Oliveira just beat Max Holloway in a rematch for the BMF title fight, and it was a pretty dominant one-sided victory. Going into this fight, we all understood that Max Holloway was great and talented on the feet, and Charles wasn't too bad for himself on the feet also. However, Max had never been tested on the ground with a high-level grappler like Charles Oliveira before. And in this fight, you can clearly see that it was a huge challenge for him to deal with. For his first fight with a very dominant grappler being Charles Oliveira, it was a lot to handle as he got dominated throughout most of the fight. And for Charles Oliveira, he followed the smart, intelligent strategy to victory. Although it might have not been the most entertaining fight in the BMF history, as in the BMF title fights we are normally accustomed to a lot of violence, a lot of stand and bang, that type of aura when it comes to the BMF title shot is normally there. However, in this fight, it was more grappling heavy, as we expected Charles Oliveira to take minimal risk on the feet with Max Holloway and use his best asset, which was his grappling, which made perfect sense for him to do, as in his last title shot, Charles Oliveira did stand with Ilia Topuria, which did result in him getting KO'd. So deciding to grapple with Max Holloway was the smartest thing for Charles to do to get the victory, as Max has never really been tested before with a high level grappler, and Charles is amazing when it comes to grappling. So taking that risk with Max Holloway isn't really worth it, as you could see that previously it didn't really end well for him. And since both men are in a point in their careers where this win really did mean the next step forward in their career, it was the most intelligent thing for Charles to do. Although it didn't entertain a lot of fans, it was the right thing to do for him to move forward. Now that being said, what does this mean for both fighters? Well, for Charles Oliveira, it shows that he really still is up there in the higher rankings of the lightweight division. He still can compete, and he is still someone to be taken seriously, as he doesn't seem very washed and looks like he can make a potential comeback in his career. Now for Max Holloway, what this performance tells us is that his submission defense is pretty good, like he wasn't getting submitted in the fight. However, when it comes to overall grappling, you can see that Max Holloway has a clear weakness when it comes to this. He hasn't really been tested in his career before, and having your first test with Charles Oliveira, that's a nightmare to have. And I potentially see him losing to other strong type of grapplers in the division. I don't see him beating Arman Tsarukyan, who's a pretty dominant wrestler. Ilia Topuria, I see him beating him again in the lightweight division this time. Although Max really did well in the featherweight division when he fought Ilia Topuria, I see the fight ending the same way for Max Holloway. And even if it does get into grappling situations, with Ilia's background in grappling, I see that Ilia also has another route for the fight to go towards and potentially get another win. I'd say that his days of actually getting a belt are over. I don't see him beating Charles, obviously, he just got manhandled. I don't see him beating Arman, and I don't see him beating Ilia. I'd say Max has always had a weakness, which was grappling. It just was never shown because he never really had the chance to face high level grapplers in his career, and fighting Charles for the first time really did show that there's a huge weakness in his arsenal, which will take a lot of time to develop and fix. And at the age he is at right now, he's not getting any younger. If he was to have this weakness exposed at an earlier stage in his career when he was in his younger days, then he could have worked on it. But coming to the age of where he is right now, I don't see him potentially fixing this and making a huge comeback and being better than before. And it hurts me to say this, but for Max Holloway, I see that his future potentially at the lightweight division is going to be the gatekeeper for lower ranked contenders to come up and challenge to see if they're worthy and championship level fighters and ready for the title. As we all know, he's not going to beat Ilia again. He didn't beat Charles this time. He doesn't really stand a chance against Arman Tsarukyan, as Arman's a very dominant wrestler. That fight that was previously booked with Khabib in the past, thank God that fight never ever happened, because I don't want to think of what would have happened to Max Holloway. But yeah, I don't see his future being very bright in terms of getting a title. That BMF title was the only thing he had going for himself in terms of an actual title. But now that that's over, I'd say the thing that Max Holloway has to do for his career right now is just have a lot of entertaining fights with other fighters who are coming into the division. You know, try have matchups where you can just stand and bang, because that's your clear strength, and make the most amount of money you can with the short time you've got left in the sport. But anyways, that's been this video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, subscribe, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.